Now, on to fiscal policy. Kenya and China have signed an agreement designed to eliminate double taxation. Trade between the two countries has been rising consistently for the last decade or so. Both countries believe the agreement will help increase opportunities for investment in both nations. Kenya has signed about 20 similar agreements with other nations, and it says trade with those partners has improved. It's now inviting Chinese investors into a range of sectors, from agriculture to textiles to energy. That's a move that Kenya hopes will offset the current trade imbalance. It stands at about $3.1 billion in China's favor.
The agreement will create certainty to the taxpayers on the taxation of various cross-border incomes derived from either country. This will also help in ensuring that there is no tax avoidance and evasion through tax planning as we seek to eliminate double taxation. The signing of the agreement should also foster deeper relations between the tax administration of the two countries through capacity building and exchange programs to ensure that we transfer skills on taxation matters, including customs matters.
All right, then. So again, focusing, of course, on developments that are happening in the United States, especially with a focus on the UN General Assembly. Let's get the latest details now on what's going on there from Liling Tan. She joins us now live from New York. So, Liling, there's a lot of emphasis here from the Trump administration on getting things done, on improving trade relationships with Africa. But given how insular this administration has been and this America First approach to policy, how seriously should we take this talk of hoping to extend economic partnerships with Africa?
Hey there, Rama. That really is the multi-billion-dollar question here, isn't it? Now, there are all these world leaders from Africa, all these foreign policy and Africa policy experts here at the UN General Assembly and on the sidelines looking to get a steer from the US government on what exactly its Africa policy is and whether the America First approach means an Africa Last policy. And to answer your question, the simple answer is we don't know. Now, the Trump administration, and specifically the president himself, has always been quite vague and continues to be vague and short on details in many of his deliveries of promises, be it trade or partnerships. And he has not veered off that vagueness this time. Now, he has spoken, of course, about Africa's potential as a place of opportunity and about increasing U.S. investments in a diverse range of industry, from transportation, agriculture, energy, tourism. But while he makes promises on one hand, his off-the-cuff remarks and his gaffes indicate a president that is at best peripherally interested in Africa issues in the African continent. I think what is perhaps most glaring about his intention where it pertains to Africa is how so many key positions within his administration, key Africa positions within his administration remain unfilled. A lot of them ambassadorial positions with African countries. And of course, the ambassador position as of September 12, I believe, remains unfilled for the African Union as well. So this is quite glaring in how much it reveals about what the U.S., how the U.S. positions its Africa policy. And the remark he made at the meeting with Africa world leaders about how many of his friends go to Africa to get rich. Now, that wasn't very well received here, and many people have said that that is tone deaf, but I think that really reveals reason to be concerned about to what extent America is really thinking about Africa.
Indeed. So the president clearly not going into any specific details, as you mentioned, of how bilateral trade and investment can be increased. But from the perspective of corporate America, where's the room for improvement in trade and investment between the U.S. and the main regional economies on the continent, like Egypt, Nigeria, South Africa, and Kenya?
Well, there certainly is the contention that Africa has a lot of potential to increase trade relations with, and I don't think people are questioning that potential. In fact, I think from the Secretary of Commerce earlier this year, Wilbur Ross said that trade, U.S. trade with Africa in the past 15 years has grown consistently compared to the same period before, and that at the same time, the U.S. trade deficit with Africa has also declined. And he also expressed positivity about continuing this relationship, and also said that America has to continue this relationship that has been adopted by previous U.S. administrations as well, to transition from aid to trade where it comes to Africa. So that suggests an overarching interest in improving these bilateral trade relationships. But again, as I mentioned before, a lot of the details are still lacking. So the question is, how is America going to do this exactly? And to be honest, your guess is as good as mine.
Indeed. And of course, it's worth pointing out for our viewers, of course, that U.S. exports to sub-Saharan Africa, about 1.5% of total U.S. exports as a whole. One last question for you, Lileng. The president also spoke about something else here. The health secretary coming to the continent to promote the U.S. global health security agenda. What's the value proposition here for sub-Saharan states?
Okay, let's look at the U.S. global health security agenda itself. Now, ostensibly, it aspires to accomplish several targets, several things, including fighting diseases, antimicrobial resistance, improving immunization, setting up national lab systems, as well as improving overall the response to diseases and other healthcare needs. But the reality is that the U.S. president has already issued a budget proposal in which he wants to cut funding to some key programs here, including the former President George W. Bush's emergency aid relief program known as PEPFAR. And it does appear that and of course there have been other proposed cuts across the board as well, which raises a lot of questions about the U.S. commitment to this endeavor. And what's also perhaps revealing is that in his speech to African leaders, he referred twice, I believe at least twice, to Namibia for its healthcare system, citing it as a role model. The problem, though, is there is no such country called Namibia. You know that, Rama. I know that, Rama. The fact that the U.S. president doesn't know that is very revealing in terms of, to what extent the American president is paying attention to Africa, regardless of whether it's healthcare, economic trade, or bilateral trade, or humanitarian assistance.
Indeed. Of course, Namibia is just about as fictional as the land of Wakanda. We'll leave it there for the time being. Thank you very much for that. That's Lileng Tanda joining us live from New York.